Okay, we're going to do a audio podcast at this point. I'm back here in the city of Albany, New York, after spending a very intense night with news coverage here in Albany. I want to run a live audio session here for a few minutes just to recap the events of last night and tell you a little bit about what's going on here at the noontime hour. We're at 11:52 a.m. here in Albany, New York. At this point, the time of this video, a picture here on your screen, you can see a tractor trailer was set on fire last night on South Pearl Street, not far from the South Albany City Police Station on Arch Street. That tractor trailer driver making his way south on South Pearl Street, having no idea what he was headed for as he continued on the path to a very intense group of protesters, very angry protesters and other individuals that were in the street. That tractor trailer driver quickly finding himself in massive trouble at that scene there, where you can see that tractor trailer was eventually lit on fire. That tractor trailer tractor trailer driver rather did the right thing immediately. He fled from that tractor trailer and ran from that scene. You could see that individual running very fast from that truck, the cab of that truck, as the angry individuals that were there in the street quickly overtook that tractor trailer, eventually setting that vehicle on fire. I've got a video here on my Facebook page showing you the beginning of that fire that took place. They actually lit fire to a picnic table there on South Pearl Street. Eventually carried that burning picnic table over to that tractor trailer, which had been overtaken and very quickly looted, by the way. That tractor trailer was opened up by those angry persons in that street, and they quickly looted that vehicle, taking everything that was inside. Eventually, last night during that protest, I was struck by gunfire. I was hit by a rubber bullet. I noted to that a number of times during my video cast last night, which ran on for about 3 hours. I want to let everybody know my leg is okay today. I've got a hell of a bruise there, basically the size of a baseball, a very hard position there where the rubber bullet impacted my leg. A very, very painful situation. But I want to let everybody know that I am okay. A number of bursts of tear gas going through that neighborhood, a very populated residential neighborhood there on South Pearl Street. What led to this? Earlier in the night, just prior to me arriving there, there was a group of people that were gathered to protest outside the South Albany City Police Station on Arch Street. That protest at the police station quickly becoming violent, with rocks being thrown towards officers. Eventually, a Albany City Police car seeing some damage with some glass breakage there, and some rocks being thrown at a couple of Albany police units, from what I understand from other reporters that were at that scene. By the time I had arrived in that vicinity, Albany police officers on horseback and an armored vehicle and a row of fully geared Riot police were there in force, shoulder to shoulder, and they had moved those persons away from that city police station, thankfully, before something much worse could have developed there. They were able to move that angry group of people down onto South Pearl Street from that Albany City Police Station. Eventually, they began to move those persons in a northerly direction along South Pearl Street towards the area of the Times Union Center, right in downtown Albany, where so much violence erupted. Protesters and other persons in that area, I'll describe them as other persons because I don't really think a lot of the people that were down there were actually protesters. There were a number of legitimate protesters who were chanting messages into the street. A lot of them were holding signs that they had made, decent looking signs, and signs with reasonable messages displayed. But a lot of those persons down there really didn't have a message. They were there merely to cause violence and trouble in the street, and that's exactly what they did. They completely destroyed the probation department across the street from the Times Union Center. There's some of that coverage here on our Facebook Live video from last night. We ran that coverage for about 3 hours last night. Now, I've just arrived here in the city of Albany a few minutes ago, and I'm going to take a ride around the city and give you a look at a lot of the damage. I've already surveyed some of that damage along Central Avenue in the area of Lark Street, the area of Henry Johnson Boulevard. I saw some stores that have been boarded up. Now, folks, I have to give credit where credit is due to the City of Albany Department of Public Works. Those employees came out here last night about 2 a.m. I saw a row of a convoy, really, of Department of Public Works vehicles from the City of Albany Department of Public Works, including heavy equipment. There were front-end loaders there. There were dump trucks. There were so many different types of Albany Department of Public Works vehicles, employees there along South Pearl Street and North Pearl Street, boarding up windows. I have no idea where these folks, the folks that work for the city DPW, where they came up with that much lumber, plywood, flat plywood and boards, but they had a very large supply of that lumber, which they were using to board up the windows, the badly damaged storefronts and businesses along South and North Pearl Street. There were so many windows broken out in those areas. There was a lot of businesses that weren't damaged. There was a lot of locations that didn't see any damage, but again, as I've been telling you here in this cast, that there's been so many of the businesses that did see that damage, so much glass, and the Department of Public Works employees wasting no time. They were out here at 2 o'clock this morning with a army of DPW workers boarding up those businesses and securing locations one at a time, and that was an incredible sight to see. Unfortunately, I didn't manage to get any of that coverage here on our newscast from last night. But if you're just logging on to this podcast, I chose to do an audio podcast here this morning for now, as I'm grouping together with some other media down here, and we're going to make a plan on what we're going to cover and what needs to be covered and what needs to be shown. A lot of you still asking about my leg. Those of you that were watching last night, I was actually shot by city police. The city police in an armored vehicle actually shot me in the leg with a rubber bullet. I was crouched down in a crouched position in what I thought was a reasonable distance away from a line of Albany police officers. The first round went past me and went into one of those glass vestibuled bus stops, and it smashed out the windows in that bus stop, and so much glass coming down around me. I took heat on that first shot, and I immediately took cover and went into what I believe to be a safe area, and I remained in that area in hiding really for about 10 minutes. The moment that I popped back out to try and get some more coverage of that tractor trailer that was on fire, I was immediately hit by a round in the leg. And you know, I'm not saying that in a bad way. I want all of you that are listening to this video, and I mentioned it several times in my video cast last night, I thank the officer that did that. I was there. I dressed to fit in with that crowd. I did not want to look like a news reporter by any means. I really had no idea what I was headed for, and I certainly wanted to try and at least blend in with the persons that were there as best I could. I wore a hoodie, and I was able to really hide my press credential underneath that hoodie, and I had the hood up, and I was able to really stay away from the appearance that I was any sort of press official. I wanted to blend in. So I thank, again, the officer that was on top of that City of Albany Police Department armored vehicle who shot me. He had no idea who I was. I was in an area that rubber bullets and tear gas absolutely needed to be used. This was a dangerous dangerous situation with that tractor trailer being set on fire. Flames could be seen. You can see the picture there in the center of your screen. Flames could be seen from that tractor trailer fire as tall as what I estimated to be at least 40 feet into the air. That was just nothing but an orange glow. You can see a lot of that in our coverage here. But of course, after being hit by that rubber bullet, was going to be remaining in that area to have that happen again. I quickly went and hid, in fact, behind a building where some residents there on South Pearl Street near Westerlo were able to help me hide. They took care of me. They offered me water. At that point, I couldn't see. I was completely blinded by tear gas. There was such pain. I have to explain to you during this podcast the use of those rubber bullets and tear gas absolutely needed to happen. There is no question in my mind that the level of force used by the City of Albany Police Department was absolutely warranted and absolutely necessary. Again, a very, very dangerous situation there in a very populated residential neighborhood there along South Pearl Street in the area of the Capital City Rescue Mission. And if you're not familiar with that, it's basically at the base of Arch Street, which is the location of the South Albany Police Department, where I mentioned that this was really the start of last night's activities that occurred. I continued to follow news coverage after I stopped the broadcast. I rechecked in with friends at News Channel 10, and there really didn't appear to be a lot of developing news at that point, at the point that I had turned off my broadcast after covering this for about 3 hours. I decided that it was time to roll out, and as I was rolling out, a ton of additional activity seemed to pipe up in different areas of the city. Some of the heightened, more intense activity that I became aware of was on Central Avenue. In the area of, I believe, Livingston is what they had said, and I could have that mistaken. I'm not sure. But I am going to take a ride up Central Avenue. I'm going to give you a live look here on Facebook Live at the cleanup that's going on this morning. I wanted to let everybody know that upon my entry into the city of Albany here just prior to 11:30 this morning, I did take a ride around. There is a great group of folks, volunteers, they appeared to be, that are just out there with brooms, and everyone's wearing masks, and they're carrying buckets, and they're doing what they can to sweep Central Avenue and clean that area up. I did see a Boost Mobile store that had been completely broken into and looted. I saw one of the liquor stores at Central Avenue near Henry Johnson Boulevard had been completely broken into and looted again, and some very nice volunteers there at the that location cleaning that area up. A lot of boards being placed onto broken out windows, and a lot of additional security measures going into place here in the city of Albany today. Now, there were some reports of some incidents occurring down in the Lark Street area. I did hear at least one walk-in gunshot wound at Albany Medical Center. That was broadcasted over police frequencies. They indicated that there was a walk-in victim with a gunshot at Albany Medical Center somewhere around 1 a.m., 1 o'clock this morning. I did not get any additional details on that gunshot victim, but they did confirm that they had a person with a gunshot, a confirmed gunshot, walk into Albany Medical Center. And that is one of the things that I heard about from last night that I was able to get confirmed. Now, just a quick recap here again before I take you out on some live coverage here, give you a look at the streets here in Albany. I'm going to take you down by the Arch Street Police Station, the South Albany Police Station. I was informed that there was a cleanup effort at that location that started at around 10 o'clock this morning. I'm going to take you down there in just a few minutes. I've got to pick somebody up so that I can be driven, and once I have someone to drive me, I can safely video from a passenger side, give you a look here around the city, give you an idea of exactly what was what. The last thing that I covered last night was a developing situation on Eagle and Madison Avenue. Around 2 o'clock or so this morning, you had a group of angry persons in that vicinity. They had set something on fire. It was a rather large fire there at the street corner. You had heavily armed and geared police move into that area rather quickly. You had one of those MRAP vehicles from the Albany County Sheriff's Office, and you had one of those armored Albany City Police vehicles and a number of police SUVs and a number of police officers that stood shoulder to shoulder to quickly take control of that situation, a burning fire at that corner at Eagle and Madison Avenue. I was able to film a little bit of that incident from the New York State Museum on Madison Avenue, and I was able to cover that for a little while. Police officers eventually greeted myself and some other news persons and gave us a better vantage point. We were able to go up onto the Capitol and the plaza to go up in the Empire State Plaza, and we were able to secure a corner of a location that kind of oversaw the entire neighborhood there. And we watched as persons were moved away from that area. Albany police did a phenomenal job of broadcasting several audio messages warning persons in that vicinity that they could be arrested if they chose to stay in that area. A curfew going into place, an official curfew signed by the mayor of Albany last night. And they quickly let people know using loud audio speakers from that armored Albany police vehicle that persons could be arrested if they chose to stay out. I'm going to wrap up this coverage for now here on our audio cast. I just wanted to talk with everyone briefly that's been waiting for coverage here in the daylight. I want to let you know I'm a little bit behind schedule, but I'm going to be showing you some pictures here in my Facebook Live as soon as I can get someone to drive me and I can safely do that from the passenger side. Folks, there's a lot to see here in Albany. There's a lot of destruction. A lot of it, again, as I've credited the City of Albany Department of Public Works, they came out in a convoy of vehicles last night and an army of DPW workers here in the city of Albany at around 2 o'clock this morning. They started to board up the damaged locations on South and North Pearl Streets. There was some other locations that saw a lot of heavy damage. The probation department across from the Times Union Center was very, very heavily damaged. If you look at our Facebook live video from last night, you can see one of the persons that was in that area last night actually went on camera with us and admitted to damaging part of that building and was actually proud that he was able to damage the probation department last night. And he talked for several minutes on camera in front of the Times Union Center. Probably not the best move by that person, but he did give us his account of what was going on and his involvement in the massive damage that went on to that probation department right across the street from the Times Union Center. I'm going to wrap up this Facebook audio cast for now. I'm going to join another individual in a vehicle, and I'm going to take you guys for a ride around the city and show you exactly what's being seen here in the city of Albany, New York at this point in time, and exactly what's being done to address a lot of the damage. Again, as I've mentioned earlier, there's a ton of volunteers out here, community types of folks, Good Samaritan types of folks that are out here doing the right thing today. They're cleaning up the city. They're literally sweeping sidewalks on Central Avenue in front of businesses that were broken into and heavily looted during last night's unfortunate incidents here in Albany, New York. I'm going to wrap up this coverage for now. I'll be back with you folks shortly via Facebook Live. You've been watching Fulton County Area News, listening to Fulton County Area News, I should say. That picture in the center of our screen, if you're just logging on to this audio cast, it's a picture of a tractor trailer at the very beginning of the fire that was set to that vehicle last night after persons in that vicinity overtook that vehicle and lit it on fire. Flames 40 feet in the air, and that video coverage can be seen. It was right before I got shot last night here in the city of Albany by a rubber bullet. I've got a massive bruise on my leg, but I'm okay, folks. I'll be back with you here shortly. You've been listening to Fulton County Area News.